Fellas, the day is upon us. Marathon is finally launching. Now, some of you are going to try this game for the first time today. And if you walk away from your first experience going, what the hell was Bungie thinking? I know, it's brutal, fellas. Marathon is a brutal game. However, would you believe me if I told you that if you just stick it out, learn a couple tips and tricks, and understand what the gameplay loop is here that's present, you start to actually see the magic. Marathon is brutal by design. It is a punishing world, not just in its player versus player aspects, but also against the environment, against enemy AI. There are so many things that will mess you up right out the gates. Hell, look at this clip of me right here, going in, my first time solo. Look at me. I drop down to be met by a bunch of claymores. I'm one shot, and then I stumble into another corridor that also has a number of claymores that kill me. Now, I'm not gonna lie, in this moment, fellas, I literally thought to myself, what the hell, Bungie? I will uninstall this game right now. But what I found out in the hours following this event was that as you began to understand the world, so did your skill improve. You started to see the world differently. You were able to dissect it based on previous encounters. And considering the lure of being a runner and loading in with these shells, to be quite frank with you, you are meant to die a lot. And boy, have we. Which is why today we're going to be sharing our tips for how to play Marathon. These are things we have learned over the past 40 hours, and they have made our life a lot easier. And hopefully they'll help you as well. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting with tip number 1, ranking up factions and priority contracts. If you're wondering what should be your main objective when playing Marathon, really, it should be ranking up factions. Factions are essentially Marathon's versions of vendors or traders from other games. Now, the reason why you want to rank up these factions is because they quite literally make you more powerful. Each of them have their own progression trees. Each of them will have the ability to unlock important upgrades for your runner, which will last the entirety of the season. And the biggest thing is that they will give you access to important items from each faction shop in the armory. We're talking purple items, guys, gold items. And Bungie said it best themselves in their season's overview article, where they said that each season will bring new content and features that changes the way you master survival, grow your power floor, and progress throughout a season. And factions are arguably your #1 way to grow that power floor. When you wipe and die, it is those faction upgrades that is going to be able to put you back into the fight, at least with a number of good items that will allow you to compete against more kitted players. And let me just say, guys, gear inside of Marathon is everything. So how do we raise our faction reputation? The best way to rank up is by completing these priority contracts. Not only are these one of the main ways to experience the narrative of Marathon, but they also give the most XP and better rewards for completing them. For instance, right here, there are 2 priority contracts which unlock access to the factions Traxxas and Mida. Both give 90 XP per objective and each have 2 to 3 different objectives per contract. Now, you compare this to the standard contract here on the right, which has a single objective but rewards only 60 XP upon completion. Now, if you have a squad, one of the best ways to knock out factions is really to commit to the same factions together. That way, you're all going after the same objectives, which for the most part are shared on the team. Now, some of the contracts are a bit vague in what they're asking, but if you actually hover over the objective, it'll tell you pretty much exactly where to go. For example, this introducing Traxxas contract says to hack a terminal at Intersection, Complex, or Bioresearch in Dire Marsh. And then when you hover over the objective, it says in Intersection, the UESC terminal is inside the building on the 2nd floor. In Bioresearch, the terminal is inside on the ground floor. And then in Complex, the terminal is on a catwalk on the southeastern side. This is really important, guys, because you don't want to just be wandering around for too long, because that gives enough time for enemy teams to pop up. Inside of the match itself, though, as you get near the objective, you'll see this greenish yellow marker show up on your HUD, indicating that you need to interact with it. And this is pretty much how you handle every objective in the game. Some get a bit more specific, and I won't lie to you, some of them are just kind of annoying. For instance, I have one that was like, hey, you gotta find a medical cabinet and loot it. And for whatever reason, dude, I had such a hard time finding a medical cabinet. And I will say, if you do have a standard contract that just has an annoying objective, you can always just re-roll it, guys, and choose something else. Tip number 2, as you are upgrading your different factions, one thing I really want you to take note of is those capstone upgrades. Those capstone upgrades also unlocks a host of benefits specifically for the Rook class. Now, of course, these capstone upgrades have a lot of other benefits too, but tip number 2, upgrade your Rooks. Rook is essentially the scavenger class of Marathon, but in my opinion, Rook is one of the strongest shells in the game, with the ability to blend in with with the UESC, you can pretty much sneak around the map completely undetected. And this allows you to get the jump on other enemy teams. Now, the downsides of playing Rook: you cannot progress factions, you cannot get faction reputation, and you were always up against other teams of 3. You cannot load into a solo game as a Rook. Now, some would say that is a major drawback of playing Rook. In my opinion, for getting rich, Rook has the highest potential here. We put out an entire video on Rook, guys, but essentially, as you get these different upgrades in all of these various factions, many of which are very early upgrades. I'm talking capstone 1 level upgrades, which takes your Rook from being this basic scavenger shell to an absolute badass. I'm talking about loading in with enhanced weapons, loading in with claymores. Hell, there's even an upgrade that allows you to load in with a blue deluxe backpack, meaning you can hold even more stuff. And considering how fast time to kill is in this game, don't be scared to engage other teams as a Rook. You have the blend ability, which allows you to blend in with UESC, wait for the enemy to engage either other players or even enemy AI, and then make your move. TTK is fast enough, guys, that you can really sneak other players. And yes, there's even an upgrade that allows your Rook to start with a waster shotgun, which to my knowledge can pretty much 2-tap every shield in the game. So target those faction upgrades, target the Rook upgrades, because in my opinion, I think Rook will be one of the best ways you'll be able to walk away with a ton of loot. Tip number 3, as you're upgrading your factions, these are going to require a host of different things, mainly credits and materials. And let me just say, no one in their right mind is going to remember that they need 12 unstable diodes, 14 unstable biomass, 20 unstable gunmetals, the list goes on. However, what you can do is you can go to each of these items individually and track them. Now, in my opinion, you really should be always picking up diodes, biomass, gunmetals, gel, lead. But if you want the visual indicator, just track them, guys. It'll have the little eye icon. That way, when it pops up when you're looting, you'll see it right then and there, and you'll know, okay, I need that. Now, this will also apply to a number of different materials that range in various rarities. So as you get to different faction upgrades, make sure you track those items so that you'll see them out in the field, and that'll save you from having to keep up with how much you need of what. Now, a common complaint that I saw during the server slam was how much everything costs, from ammo to meds to shields. Let me just say, if you were just to buy all of those things with credits, it's a pain, man. No lie. However, there is a barter system, which in my opinion is the superior alternative. Essentially, with those materials I listed above, you can actually exchange those materials for items. For instance, a cost of a single shield is 300 credits, or you can barter for 3 unstable diodes. And the list goes on, guys. So once you're done with faction upgrades, keep getting those materials. They're still worth keeping and picking up, as they'll save you a lot of credits with this exchange system. Tip number 4. One of the biggest complaints that I saw during the server slam was about weapon mods. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. In the UI, a lot of these look very similar. Yeah, you see a little bit of changes here and there, and as we get used to it, I'm sure we'll be able to pick them up. But at least right now, it does kind of run together. And then you're in a situation where you're looking at all your weapons and you're like, okay, what mod goes where? It's frustrating. However, you can inspect a weapon, which is honestly really good to do anyways, just to take a look at the stats. But when you inspect a weapon, there will be a section towards the bottom middle of your screen that you can select and will show all of the mods that are compatible with that weapon. This will keep you from having to click all over your vault, finding mods, seeing what highlights, and instead you can do it right then and there. And clicking within each one of these boxes will pull up a menu of all of the mods within that category that you have available. This is also a good way to see individually what each mod does, how they affect your stats, and how it affects your weapons when applied. This is actually a really good system that I didn't see enough people taking advantage of, and really, it took me a whole day before I realized this was even a thing, so completely understandable if you missed it. Tip number 5. One of the most interesting aspects to our weapons are alternate weapon actions. Some weapons have these alternate weapon actions that aren't super obvious at glance, but they are definitely worth using. For instance, the M77 assault rifle by default has an iron sight, but if you hit Z or left on the D-pad, it then swaps to its built-in scope. Some machine guns also have a built-in gun shield that can be activated. And even the V11 punch sidearm has an alternate fire mode where you can hold down the trigger to then build up and release a high damage burst, which yes, Schemas can one-shot, and as a Rook, many times you actually load in with a V11 punch sidearm, which in my opinion is one of the best weapons in the game. But even beyond that, guys, is as you upgrade your weapons and add more mods, be looking at those mods because some mods actually add alternate weapon actions. I literally had a gold mod on this LMG which allowed me to aim down sights. I would produce a shield, and any damage that the shield took would feed ammo back into the weapon. It was so good for dealing with PvE ads, and also really good against dealing with players when I was looking to just put down heavy fire. So inspect those weapons, guys, and definitely take advantage of those alternate weapon actions. Tip number 6. I know this one's gonna sound pretty obvious, but use your ping. Now, the reason why the ping system here is so important in Marathon is not just to give you a visual indicator where the enemy is. Inside a Marathon, though, you actually get information. If you see in the bottom left-hand of your screen, it literally will show you the type of enemy that you just pinged. So if you're confused, you're like, I don't know, is that an enemy? Is that another player? Or is that an enemy AI? What is it? Just ping, fellas. It'll tell you exactly who that enemy is and what you're up against. Even going as far as telling you the shield type they have, and hell, even their name. You can literally ping someone and it'll say who their name is. And if you get back somebody like DeFizzle or Benny, you may want to rethink that engagement. Pings are fantastic, guys. Take advantage of it, not just for your team, but for yourself, as it just provides you with vital information. Tip number 7, use your knife. Now, I know this is a first-person shooter, but you also have a knife. And yes, when you're running around, you really want to be using your knife as it helps mitigate heat generation, thus allowing you to move or sprint for longer. But the reason why I really like to use a knife is because it's an easy way to secure kills against UESC without alerting the entire battlefield. Most of your standard recruit enemies will die in 1 to 2 knife hits, which will save you ammo and keep you from making too much noise. But even in close quarter combat, I cannot tell you how many times knives mess up enemy players. I literally have been killed multiple times from an assassin running in with his knife and literally just knifing me to death. It's effective. And if you're in a situation where you're trying to go for that sneak fast kill in super close quarters, your knife is very good for that. Tip number 8, manage your heat. Even though this one may be a bit too basic for some, I see many people just mismanaging their heat terribly, especially if you're coming from Destiny. You cannot spam your slide, as that generates a lot of heat. What heat essentially represents is a reverse stamina bar that will fill up as you run, as you jump, as you slide, and even when you use your abilities. Hell, even when you melee. And I won't lie to you, at first, it feels pretty bad. Your base shells fills up that heat meter extremely fast. However, there's specifically a number of heat upgrades in Cyber Acme, and you can also pick up implants, which increases your heat capacity stats. Now, what this really means for you in game is you want to look for things that can help you, such as water. Water allows your heat meter to build up slower, and this is pretty much any source of water on the map, not just when it's raining. Now, another tip that you may not have known about when it comes to dealing with heat, turns out, and this is posted by the Marathon Twitter account, when you crouch, it makes your heat dissipate faster. If there's one thing that will get you killed inside a Marathon faster than anything else, it's mismanagement of that heat. If you're stuck out in the open and you suddenly max out that heat bar, GG's, man, which is why it's best to never overheat yourself, as that cooldown for you to be able to sprint again or do any other action is pretty long after doing so. So always keep an eye on that heat bar, guys. Tip number 9, consumables. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there is a lot of consumables and a lot of equipment inside of Marathon, but many of these are just being outright overlooked. You see, during your matches, you'll find things even like depleted patch kits and shield charges. Some people don't even pick these up, but I think they're fantastic. You're not gonna take them out of the game with you, but you can use them right there on the spot, and it keeps you from dipping into your good heals and your good shields. And I primarily just use them after dealing with PvE ads. But then we have other consumables, things like cardio kick, which are similar to like adrenaline shots from Arc Raiders. I've literally had my run saved from a depleted cardio kick that we found at the last second as we were rushing to get to an extract point. What these essentially do is they temporarily increase heat capacity and agility stats. There's also energy amps, which improves prime and tactical ability recharge rates, antivirus packs, which adds a buffer against hostile data corruption. We're going to be talking about that in a bit more when it comes to events on the map. Yes, there are certain zones drones that you can't even access unless you have an antivirus pack. Then you have your cleansing consumables, such as mechanic kits, which removes hazardous mechanical status effects such as frost, immobilize, overheat, and toxin. These also maximize your hardware stat for a short duration. And if you've ever been hit by those yellow plants that poison you, these mechanic kits are a great counter to those, as that poison can damn near kill you if you're not full health. You also have OS debugs, which removes hazardous operating system status effects such as EMPs and hack. And this also maximizes your firewall stats for a short duration. You have signal jammers, which temporarily scrambles your visual profile, obscuring your appearance to hostile runners, on top of UESC and various sensors. If you ever see an enemy that looks blurry and pixelated, this is why. No, they're not hacking. It's just a signal jammer. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention in that consumable department are ammo crates. These can be a great source if you're running low on ammo, even if it's just a gray rarity. Pick them up, guys. Drop them down right then and there, and they go all the way up to blue rarity, and they increase the amount of ammo and ammo type depending on that rarity. Sponsor kits also come in these crates, which is great considering sponsor kits typically give you a small amount of ammo. Now, I'm going to put pressure on at least one specific shell, and that is my triage mains, aka the healer class. You guys have the ability to deploy drones to everyone on your squad, and every time you consume something, you're able to apply those buffs to your teammates, whether it's antivirus, OS debugs, cardio kicks. As a triage player, honestly, this is going to be incredibly important for you, to the point where as I was playing, I was taking a number of these different consumables so that I could deploy them to my teammates. And as we actually get into the game and get more gear and get more kitted out, we're going to reach a point where when you load into a match, you're probably going to hit a lot of these consumables. Like, I'm just saying, guys, you're going to hit a cardio kick, an energy amp, all of which will drop the cooldowns of your abilities, because as you know, inside a marathon, PvP is pretty front heavy. A lot of the PvP encounters happens like within the first 60 seconds. And unfortunately, that means most of your abilities are still on cooldown. However, if you're just a beginner player, guys, just keep a lookout for these, see where you can apply them. And if you're a triage main, you need to be very familiar with all of these. Tip number 10, weapon trace status. Now, something I want you to keep in mind is that certain loot in marathon will degrade over time, which is actually determined by the amount of traces it has remaining. Now, to even view this stat, you need to inspect the item, and you'll see the trace status there in the top right corner. Now, hovering over the trace status tells you the amount of traces remaining, and will start out with 5 traces. And each time the item is looted from a hostile runner, its trace status is reduced by 1. Now, when an item's trace status reaches 0 when looted, it is not looted, but instead converted to credits. Now, this time, guys, I'm not sure if there's a way to even repair a weapon back up to 5 traces, but just something to keep in mind when looting. At the same time, if you're looking at a gold item and it only has a few traces left, hell man, still loot that thing. And if you're worried about losing traces on it from that point on, just don't die. That easy, fellas. Just don't die. Tip number 11, item rarity and oddities. Now, most of us are pretty aware of the hierarchy of items inside of Marathon. You got your gray standard items, your green and enhanced items, your blue deluxe items, your purple superior items, and your gold prestige items. What you may not know, though, is that some items can have secondary rarities tied to them, which are these items here that have text on the background behind the item icon. These include Enduring, which reads, upon exfil, this item's value will be increased. Bloodthirsty, which states that down hostile runners to increase this item's value. Item's value will be reset if you are down. Materialist, which states that upon exfil, grants additional standard and enhanced salvage. And there's also supposed to be Materialist Plus, which reads that upon exfil, grants additional deluxe and superior salvage. And then finally, Compromise, which says it will be destroyed upon exfil, and you'll need to exfiltrate with a matter fixes to stabilize it. Now, we'll say Compromise really won't affect you too much. It's mainly for my Rook players. You see, Rook players load in with Compromise gear. They're not meant to take out their backpack and some of their other items. However, if you find a matter fixative, you can then use that to stabilize those items so that you can extract. Rook actually has a specific upgrade in the Cyber Acme tree, which increases the chance of finding matter fixatives. The main takeaway, guys, is that most of these items outside of Compromise offer extra value. So if you're sitting there with like a purple backpack and you're like, yo, should I keep my purple backpack with no text behind it? Or should I keep this identical purple backpack instead, but it has Materialists or something like that? You might want to make the swap. as that will be more valuable for you. And keep in mind, this is just from what we've seen so far. I'm sure there's going to be even more stuff now that Marathon is fully launched. Guys, as you were playing and upgrading your factions, you're going to be coming across items called Schemas. And you can kind of think of these as blueprints for Marathon. Now, there's no crafting system in Marathon, but what these schemas allow is for you to purchase items directly from the armory, even if you don't have it fully unlocked through your faction. For example, during one of my Rook runs, I looted this V99 channel rifle schema, which means if I successfully exfil with it, I can then purchase 3 of these in the armory. And it's my understanding that this refreshes daily. Now, let me just say, it's not cheap. Matter of fact, it's pretty expensive. One of my editors got the schema for the V85 circuit breaker, which is a shotgun costing 15,000 credits. The same with the V99. Now, keep in mind, this is not just for weapons. There's a number of items that you can find schemas for, which is honestly a huge way to give you a leg up when kitting out your shell. Factions do take a little bit of time. And even though the overall goal is to max out our factions and to unlock all of the items via factions, some items are only found via schemas or as just RNG drops in the world. But even items that can be unlocked via factions can also drop as schemas. And what this essentially allows you to do is bypass the time it takes to upgrade that specific faction tree and instead get the item right then and there, and hell, even use those items to then unlock it directly within the faction itself. Look out for schemas. Honestly, if you come across any of them in the wild, guys, pick them up. They are invaluable. Now, tip number 13. This is not one you need to do, but it is something that can help you. And it's one of those tips that you could take advantage of outside of the game itself. We're talking interactive maps. And the community has already started making one of these for Marathon. We're going to have the one we use linked in the description below, but it seems pretty fleshed out so far, with Perimeter and Dire Marsh both fairly complete. And you can toggle on and off these different interactive markers, and there's a ton of good information here, from spawn points to crew and guarded exfil locations to even the different locked rooms scattered across the map. You can even view the different types of containers and their locations, which may be pretty useful, as some contracts will say things like, hey, loot an arms locker, for example, or a medical cabinet. Now, keep in mind, these are still a work in progress, as the server slam was only for a few days, and not all of these items here that are present on the map are always going to be present for you on your runs, but it at least shows you different points where it could potentially be. And as we get the other maps, like Outposts and the Marathon ship map, these interactive maps are going to continue to be invaluable. Now, if you've played things like Destiny, we've really leaned on sources like D2 Foundry, like GG, stuff like that. There's actually a website that has a database for all the different items inside of Marathon, from weapons to cores to implants to materials. I'm going to have all of these websites linked in the description down below, guys, but it contains lots of information about Marathon's different systems and items. Keep in mind, though, this is still a work in progress, but it's a great way to just sift through different items that are present inside of Marathon's loot pools. Now, tip number 14. This is arguably the biggest one here, guys, and that is map events. If you want to know how to get the highest tier loot very early on in Marathon, it really comes down to participating in map events. And there's quite a few of these, and as we get into the main game, there's going to be even more. Now, 2 of the ones that I found to be really good, though, was the Warden bosses on both Perimeter and Dire Marsh, as well as the Lockdown event on Dire Marsh. First up, the Warden. You can find them around Overflow on Perimeter and the Algae Ponds on Dire Marsh. And you'll know they're active on the map as you'll see this red priority hostile indicator. Now, these bosses are gold shielded, and they have a chance of dropping some really good stuff, but they are tankier. And I would say if you're a solo player, good luck. Definitely something I would only do with the team. And even with the team, it's kind of sketchy because you have so many opportunities for another team to collapse on you while you're taking out this boss, which is why it's actually kind of best to bait this boss, let someone else engage it, or at least clear out the PvP enemies first before engaging this boss. Now, there are 2 different types of wardens. Perimeter has the Wraith Warden, which can clone themselves straight up like 8 tracks from Destiny. This boss can hack you, which really messes up your HUD and make it difficult to see. Then we have Dire Marsh, which has the Scorch Warden, which leaves behind a trail of fire as they move around, and they have a big shield which can block a lot of your damage. Now, something that's really nice, especially for my Warden on Dire Marsh, there's these explosive crates that you can shoot, which will also do damage damage to the boss. Every time you see the boss getting close to one of these, hit one of those crates. It'll do AoE damage, especially if they're hiding behind the shield. And as soon as you drop that shield, you need to immediately aggro and melt them. Now, I will say right out the gate, this one is a bit difficult. Having better kits, better builds, all that stuff will help a lot. So don't feel like you need to take on these wardens right out the gates, but they do drop good loot. Now, this takes us, in my opinion, to actually the best event, and this is present on Dire Marsh, and that's Lockdown. Lockdown is literally in the name. It's an area that is locked down. And you'll see it on your HUD exactly where it takes place. You'll notice also when you look into the sky, there'll be this big square looking ship that starts to descend on the location. It's got red lights. It looks freaky. Now it puts this AoE shield around this area, locking it down. And the only way to get in there without dying is if you take an antivirus pack, which is why I said if you're a triage player, this is when you want to disperse your drones to your teammates, pop that antivirus pack, and now you can spread that buff to all of your teammates without needing multiple antivirus consumables. Now, when you get inside of the lockdown area, you're going to want to look for a blue icon. This is going to be a data corruption access key, which you're going to need to disable the lockdown. I wish there was a better way I could tell you when finding these different blue markers, but you kind of just want to wander around the center area of this map until you see it pop up on your HUD. Now, once you have the key, you want to then look for this blue round container. Now, these are always in the same spot, and they're normally out in the open. And there's a blue beam that's shooting up into the sky, indicating its location. And that's also where you're going to be looting. Now, in order to even open this container, you'll first need to disable the lockdown by using the key. And specifically with your first one, you'll need to disable the lockdown with your data corruption access key in the terminal next to the container. Next, you'll need another key, and this one is called the lockdown drive, which you'll use to insert into the blue big container, which will then spawn in 3 waves of UESC enemies. Now, each of these waves of enemies do get progressively harder, ending with some purple shielded enemies. But upon doing so, you can then loot that blue container. Now, inside of this container, you can get some pretty good things, guys. And I mean some of the best stuff in the game, from purples to golds. But here's the catch. The first lockdown you do has okay loot, but not the best. But you'll notice after a few minutes, a second lockdown will spawn on the map. That's why when you loot the container, it will also contain another lockdown drive key, which you're going to need for the next lockdown, as well as another antivirus pack. You'll then head to the location of the next lockdown, enter it, repeat the same process, kill those waves of enemies, and then you'll loot the second lockdown, which will actually have a bit better loot than the previous. But to fully max out your lockdown loot, you're going to want to do a third one of these. You'll wait for it to ping up on the map, you'll have your lockdown drive key, and upon completing that third one, this is where the juiciest stuff drops. A lot of purple items, you can even get some gold items, but beyond that, guys, is what we got in our final run of the server slam, and that was a red key for the Cryo Archive, which most certainly will contain the best loot in the game. Hands down, guys, do lockdowns. When you see it spawn up on the map, you need to go out of your way to get that thing done. And if you don't have an antivirus pack, you may find one on someone's body or even a UESC bot. Hell, sometimes they're in loot cabinets. Just be looking around, but really what it comes down to is that if you're a triage player and you're playing with a squad, in my opinion, and look, I play triage, I just always have at least 2 antivirus packs with me, just in case. Now, I have heard different things that spawning in lockdown can be done manually. Some people have said that you can go in and wipe out all of the ads in a given area, and that will spawn in lockdown. Personally, I have not had that happen. Kind of like the Warden, it seems like it's RNG related, and we've played a lot of Dire Marsh, and we wiped ads in areas over and over. So this didn't seem like something we were able to replicate, but if you want to know what's priority number 1 for us, every time you come by our stream, we are going to be chasing these lockdowns over and over. I need those red keys. Those keys right there should be giving us access to the best loot in the game, and so if there is a way to manually spawn in lockdowns, I promise we will be all over it. So guys, those are my tips for Marathon. Kind of a long video, I know. Some of these tips a bit more dense than others. And considering we have the full game in front of us over the next few days, who knows, we may have a follow-up video, especially for Outposts, our third map, which will also have events specifically tied to it. Good luck to all of you out there, guys. If you want to come by our stream, we'll be live streaming this game pretty much every day. We'll be giving away copies of Marathon, and we would love to have you along for the ride. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.